Let's talk about All Her Fault and the weaponization of gendered expectations. So, one of my followers asked me to talk about All Her Fault on Peacock. This is an adaptation of a book from Ireland, I believe, by Andrea Demora. I liked it a lot. I think that the end could have used some tweaking, but I'm going to do mild spoilers. I'm not going to spoil the big twists at the end, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the general overall plot. So, All Her Fault premiered on Peacock starring Sarah Snook, Jake Lacey, Michael Pena, Jay Ellis, and Dakota Fanning. And I thought it was a really interesting exploration of the way that, like, people sort of determine what roles you're going to play in your marriage before you even are parents, right? The All Her Fault in the title comes from the kidnapping of Milo, Sarah Snook, and Jake Lacey's son. And she was supposed to, like, check out the babysitter. There's this whole procedure that they have where you're, like, supposed to make sure that the right person is texting you, make sure that you have the house right, make sure that you have the address. And when the police are questioning her, she's like, oh, I didn't do any of that because I had a job, right? A lot of this series focuses on things that I've talked about on this account, right? I think this month I talked about it in All's Fair, and I talked about it in my review of the 10-year affair, where millennial women were sold a sort of false bill of goods, right? You were told that you were going to marry the love of your life and he was going to help out equally in the house and you were going to live happily ever after. And I think as we turn 40, or they are 40, I'm not 40 yet, but as a lot of people turn 40 and they're like in these marriages, they're like, wait, this is not what I expected. And that's exactly what happens on this show. Everyone on the show is successful, but Jake Lacey's character has a business and he employs his brother. And then Sarah Snook also has a job. She runs her own company with Jay Ellis, right? And then Dakota Fanning is like a high-powered marketer. She's an exec of some sort. And both of the women become friends because they are facing this tension of like, I want to be a good mom, but I also want to have a job and I can't do both in this very real way, right? I think a lot of women can identify with this feeling of like being pulled in every single direction, where the stay-at-home moms in the show, I'm not talking about real life, the stay-at-home moms on the show are like, why aren't you around? We need you to volunteer. We need you to show up more. And then their jobs are like, why aren't you around? We need you to show up more. So there's this real feeling of being torn in between both lives, where it's like you need your job to provide for your family and to be a good worker and to have like a sense of fulfillment. These characters, again, I'm not extrapolating onto anyone, and they feel guilty. And I think one of the things is that they are made to feel guilty by a lot of the men in their lives, right? Like Jake Lacey, the cops, Dakota Fanning's husband, who is the devil, right? He takes this male parental neglect and takes it up to 12, right? He's like, I don't know where the kids are going after school. I don't know the name of the doctor. I don't know anything. I don't know what he eats. I don't know what time he eats. When Dakota Fanning has a meeting in the city, he's like calling her nonstop and he's like, where's the stuffy? Where's this? Where's that? I don't know how to do bath time. Like, he is so beyond any expectation of being able to help, where Dakota Fanning is in the situation that a lot of women, especially on this app, find themselves in, where they're like, I need you to watch your kid, and the fact that you can't do it is fucking crazy. We get a lot of storylines about the supporting character. Jay Ellis and the sister are in a relationship, and they're both addicts, and Jake Lacey is very upset about this. He is someone who is trying to control everyone with his money, and we get that immediately. And then his brother, who works for him, had an accident when he was a teenager, or like very young, and it's sort of this family drama that everyone is talking around. Sarah Snook and Dakota are excellent, but I also want to shout out Jake Lacey, who is very good in this role. He is so menacing and so intense and so controlling in a way that like is the patriarchy come to life, right? The way that he is trying to like set up all his little dominoes, like nothing can happen without his control, without his permission. He's doing stuff behind the cops' backs. Like, there is so much happening on this show that you're just like, wait, what the fuck is going on? But ultimately, this is Sarah Snook's show. She is showing so much devastation and so much like sadness on her face, right? The kid is missing. She's freaking out. She's being blamed for it. Like, her gender is being called into question, her motherhood, her ability to do work, right? All of the things that she holds dear to her life and her identity, right? Being a good wife, being a good mom, being a good worker, having her own company, all of it is sort of crumbling around the disappearance of her kid. And she's like, I don't know who I am if I'm not only not excelling in these three separate spheres of my life, but like failing at three separate spheres of life. And again, I'm not saying she's failing. I'm saying people think she's failing because her son disappeared and they blame her for it. I wanted more scenes of the Sarah Snook and Dakota Fanning characters. They have a bond because they are both working women and they're sort of isolated in this community where a lot of the other moms are like stay-at-home moms or have more time to be with the kids. But I wanted a lot more scenes of them talking, right? We get a lot of flashbacks of them like becoming friends and hanging out with Milo's disappearance and everything. The all her fault for Dakota Fanning is that she hired the babysitter that kidnapped Milo. But yeah, I recommend. I think it's a really good exploration of gender, power, and gender dynamics, and the way that like we expect so many things of women. We expect women to be perfect employees and perfect mothers and perfect wives in this way that's just like very unrealistic. And I think, as you can expect, the real villains of the show are the men, who are evil. They're so bad. They're bad fathers, they're bad employees, they're bad husbands, and you're just like, why are we putting so much pressure on these women when these guys are so awful?